yesterday saying that they want the defense to reveal how they are getting paid. Is this an unusual move by state prosecutors?
Well, I would call it unorthodox. Sometimes state prosecutors and even federal prosecutors do this because they suspect that the defendant is using ill-gotten gains to pay defense counsel. Typically in a mob case where the defendant is accused of stealing or hiding a lot of money, the government wants to know if the victim's assets are being used to pay defense counsel. But that's not the case here. In this case, there's not even a scintilla of evidence that there's anything untoward about paying defense counsel. So the application to reveal who's paying defense counsel is out of order and should be dismissed out of hand. It's so out of order that the court shouldn't even require defense counsel to respond to it.
Now, what is this whole conflict of interest that the state is bringing up, saying that potentially there's a conflict of interest if, for whatever reason, she sold the rights to her story to her attorney or given him permission? What does all that mean?
Well, here's the state's argument, which is a very weak one from its best point of view. If she sold any asset, well, whether it's the right to this story or some other asset with which we are currently unfamiliar, and gave the asset to her lawyer and said, take out of this whatever you need to defend me and give the rest to me, he might have some sort of a conflict between what is his and what is hers. But there's no evidence here whatsoever that that happened, and there's no right on the part of the government to even learn if it happened, and there's no right on the part of the government to learn who's paying the bills, and there's no obligation on the part of the defendant to say who's paying her bills. Her bills could be paid by anyone on the planet, so long as her lawyer continues to exercise independent and free judgment in her behalf. It doesn't matter who's paying his bills.
So in your mind, what's the point here? Why are they doing this?
Well, when you file a lot of motions against the other side, you sometimes wear them out a little bit. And we've seen this pattern before. I mean, we saw a motion filed by the state that Mr. Baez, the chief defense lawyer, was looking for a television career when the case is over, and therefore he might do something during the trial which would enhance his television career, and therefore he should be kicked off the case. That is as ridiculous a motion as this one. But when you continue to file motion after motion after motion against your adversary, whether it's the state against the defendants or whether it's the defense against the state, you sometimes can wear them down. You sometimes can make them a little sick and tired of their own case. You can make them waste time and spend money resisting these motions. I suspect that's what's happening here. It's unethical. It has no place in an American courtroom today.
Let's talk about this suicide note from George Anthony that is going to be brought up on Thursday during this motions hearing. Brad Conway, the attorney for George and Cindy Anthony, say in no way should the suicide note come into play in this trial. It should not be released. Why would the suicide note be pertinent? Why would they maybe want to use it?
The only way that the suicide note would be pertinent would be if George Anthony is going to take the stand and his mental capacity comes into question. But if he doesn't take the stand, then the jury doesn't hear about the suicide note, doesn't see the suicide note, and it doesn't come into play. If he does take the stand and claims that he is mentally sound or denies that he ever wrote the suicide note, then of course the government can present that suicide note in order to impeach his credibility. But A, I can't imagine him taking the stand. I don't know what he could do that would defend her. And B, if he does, he'll have to admit, yeah, I had a difficult time and I did contemplate suicide. That was then and this is now. So I don't see it coming in.
Now, we don't know, obviously, what's in this note, but if in this note he says something about he knows his daughter did this, or he feels that, yes, in fact, she did take Kaylee's life, would that be something that the prosecution would really wave around during this trial?
Well, the prosecution would like to know if he knows that because they would like to interview him as to how he knows it. And if he refuses to be interviewed, as you know, they can drag him before a grand jury and require him to tell the grand jury what he knows about the note. But his opinion as to her guilt or innocence is irrelevant to the case, and therefore a jury would never know that if he did this, that he wrote in the note that he thinks she did it.